All right. So second presentation of today. This one is much less technical, intentionally. I put life hacks because this is literally taken from the pain that I learned during a couple of trade shows recently with regards to games from game developers. So first question would be, is anybody here a game developer, or has anybody ever worked on games? Okay, that's good, because otherwise there might be a lot of content in here that is entirely alien. So first of all, I'm Martin. I'm Technical Project Manager at ChainSafe, and I'm responsible for Web3 Unity, which is our flagship SDK for Unity developers, making it potentially trivial to add Web3 features to your game. I've been working with that team for about a year now, and up to this point, we always tried to make technology suit the developers so that they can build their games, and we thought that might be enough to bring Web3 to gaming or game development to Web3, which is not the case. So right now the gaming industry is broken. I don't know if you know that, but it's really broken because studios are having trouble to acquire funds to build their games. The market is potentially dry. There is no funding available. Only to very few developers who just build copycat games of what you know, and this is why every game pretty much looks the same nowadays. And if any indie hit makes it, it will be copied like 20 times, because the only thing that matters is revenue, and that your game is like making revenue in a predictable manner. Everything else does not really matter anymore, and this is what got the gaming market into a really weird state that I would call broken, so that there's not even economic incentives for making innovative games anymore. This is not what you do as a developer. What you really do is you try to pitch to a publisher and make sure that you just write in that pitch what you think a publisher would be able to fund, which is the most risk-averse strategy that you can ever imagine. So is this only a bad thing? First, I thought yes, because it's really hard for a lot of people who are making a living from making games. But on the other hand, harsh conditions can be a driver of change, and seems like this is the case, because today different angles to fund your development become an option. Up to this point, nobody ever cared, but now people really start caring about Web3 or blockchain development as a whole, which has been not the case for the last couple of years that we've been building Web3 Unity. This is why I said we thought the technology is just not working, whereas there was not a demand there. Right now this is changing, and there are more and more reasons for collaboration between Web3 developers and game developers arise. The question I was asking myself is, can we work together to fix that market? We means Web3 development companies, maybe not the hardcore research corner of the industry, but more the application-facing development companies and game developers. Is there a way to fix that problem together, similar to how blockchain researchers and DeFi companies changed the financial market to a significant degree? The question is still not answered, but I would like to figure it out, because that's my job. First of all, if this is supposed to work, if we want to get from a broken market to something that can work again and bring good novel development along, then obviously we would need to support indie developers because they are the ones who bring the innovative products to market. As gamer, this is pretty easy because all you really need to do is buy indie games, and there will be more indie games. As a game studio, it's different because you need to do something really weird, which is rejecting money if it's the wrong people who want to give you money. So basically rejecting foul money and start serving your community from day one is something that is not very common. If you go to a game show, I don't know, GDC, Gamescom, or this month there's one in Brazil, and you tell people to not take publishers' money, if it's not the right kind, they will think you're crazy. So this is a big one, and it's hard to do. As Web3 developers, there's something that we can really do easily on the application layer, which is helping them to integrate into social protocols that are open. Because this is where they will have a multitude of opportunities to find their customers, to promote their games, to do a lot of things that cannot be controlled by big publishing companies, for example. And as creatives, you basically have to start monetizing your product before you even have one, which sounds weird, but with Web3, it's possible. It's not that it wouldn't be possible, it's just not something that is very common. And when I talk about it with developers, it slowly starts dawning upon them that there is an option, and it has been there for already a couple of years, but nobody wanted to really get their fingers dirty. So one of the big drivers of change, creation is becoming too easy. Usually when you made a game, there was a big upfront investment, like hundreds of millions if you have a big title, AAA one, a lot of risk, because production was so expensive. Now, this is changing. Like this little dwarf friend took me 30 seconds to create. And that means if we can create that fast, then we can validate a vision equally fast, which is new. That hasn't been the case up to this point. You would have to invest to even build something. It's similar to what we heard in the other talk. You're creating a beautiful piece of software, but then you don't know yet how the reception will be. And all of a sudden, if that gets big, like really expensive, then you need to validate your market at some point. Otherwise, the risk just gets too big. And now imagine the creative part for building this would get much, much shorter. This is what we see today, and this opens up new opportunities to validate your ideas almost in real time. Now, the next thing that you need, if you can like create really fast, is you need people to figure out that you have something to show them. And that's difficult as well, or that used to be difficult as well. A simple way to speed it up is to basically just give it away for free. There was this guy, Paul, who said it's more blessed to give than receive. And that's actually quite simple, because if there's a place where you can gift people whatever you create as usable objects in a future creation, a game or an experience, then you can already flip the delivery around, because people can come and pull. You don't have to push, and you don't have to rely on somebody who owns a lot of people that he can advertise to. So if you do that as a game developer, and this is kind of hard because nobody wants to give creation away for free, what you can do is you can convert non-crypto native audiences, people without a wallet basically, pretty fast. And we tested this, like creating a lot of wallets on the fly, which is still one of the biggest problems for Web3 in general, that people just don't have wallets and they don't want one. And everybody is abstracting away to the max, but still the numbers tell us that people don't want to convert unless they are crypto natives anyways. So this is a good way to put something in front of big audiences that they understand, which is gamers, like really, really many people. To first step, just create a wallet so you can grab your stuff, your free stuff. The other good thing about it is if you do this on-chain, you protect your IP pretty much, because you notarize that you created something at some specific block on some specific network. And it's not just giving it away. It's not just giving it away for free, but you get something in return that might not be overly obvious to many game developers from the traditional gaming industry. And what you do is you build a community from day one for your future IP, which is going to pay off later in the process, as we will see. Another good thing is it sets up your IP for easy analytics and validation, because the more people do things with your assets, the more you can see in analytics. And this is even like publicly available, so you don't even need to pay some company to do the analytics for you. You can just follow up on whatever you see on chain. We built this middle piece for different trade shows, and we tried it out, and that worked really, really well. Like converting people, giving people something that they can own, making sure that we see what happens. But this is only half of the work. What next? This is the question that I usually get. Isn't marketing that platform the hard and expensive part? Of course. In former days, that was the hard and expensive part, because you just needed to promote it with, I don't know, money that you give Google or somebody who has got the advertising power. Now it's different, because the only thing that really matters is the creation of game developers. Fast, early, and a lot. Because this is the touch points by now. It's not some store that will allow you to download a demo version of a game where you need to go and you need to know it. But as long as people can come and own a part of your future IP, you have a lot more audience and a lot more visibility. And another interesting mechanic is at play, because you have people who are not even interested in your game. They are just interested in your loot, in your assets, to trade it. Up to this point, everybody kept telling me this is a bad thing. We don't want those degens. We don't want traders because they are not interested in the game. On the flip side, these people have an intrinsic motivation to make whatever they get from you as a game developer a valuable thing that they can promote to others. So it's basically free marketing for a game. It has been there all the time. Nothing has changed, but the perception of what we can do with it is slowly changing, because, as I said at the beginning, the market conditions are so harsh that we need to think about it unless we want to end up in a situation where gaming is as dull and boring as, for example, going to Netflix or Amazon Prime or anything like that. It's all the same. And we will see this, but we don't have to. As Web3 community, like developers, maybe it's not on the protocol level, because this wouldn't help, but on the application level, there is a lot room for contribution, especially when it comes to helping game developers to access audiences via open social protocols. It's the easiest way to do it. If you don't want to promote your stuff the traditional way, well, you need somebody to help you to do it on, I don't know, Farcaster, for example. And this is something that doesn't happen. We can see this a lot, that this connection just does not happen. So we will always have a situation where people talk about something like Web3 gaming. It's just gaming. There is nothing like Web3 gaming. There is either video games or not video games. The technology that powers them never mattered. It's not even a platform. It's just, from my point of view, after quite some years in this, it's a problem that the communities don't have a joint incentive to work together. And there would be many. If that worked, and a lot of game objects, future game objects was out there for people to own them, validation would turn into something trivial. Something that by now keeps people from building their games just because they can't validate them, which means they can't provide the risk profile, which means they can't find money to build it. It would just go away. So simply by putting that loot out to the community, we get a means of analytics for oneself, for people who just want to trade your stuff. It doesn't really matter. It's just a way of thinking about this differently. And of course, community building is built in. This is kind of nice because you don't even, like, if you don't have a game yet, you don't have a database to manage your players yet, and you don't need to. You can do this lazy. You can do this later. If people are interested in what you're about to build, they will be interested when it is ready. Just like John Carmack once said, it's done when it's done. Okay. And people will then have access, or if they don't care, they can already move on. If everything fails, and there is a community for your game that you never make, you can still redirect a community to another game. This would be, if you multiply number of people that you send to another game times customer acquisition costs, it would allow you to start all over again. Something that has never been possible before. It's, again, as I said, it has all been there all the time, but it's just not applied because from what I can tell, the communities have never had the chance to talk to each other and see where they can really benefit from each other. And this is what makes it easy to come to a situation as we see today in the market where nothing can happen anymore. Now, after a long presentation about giving everything away for free, we end up in a situation where game developers now can monetize. And they don't need anybody to do that, which is only possible, it's only possible with the technologies that we provide them with. It's not possible any other way, just because it would mean we would entirely break identity and access management for large-scale systems from gaming companies that are driven by shareholder value. It just couldn't happen. This way, it can happen, and it is happening to very, very few companies who have understood how to do this, more or less by accident. Not because they planned it, but because they had no other way early on and found a community to sell to. And this is open pretty much to everybody in the current market conditions. So if in a half a year or a year's time, I look at the numbers of studios that went out of business, I hope the number will be lower because people start shifting to the opportunities that they've had for so long, and on the other side, that developers purely from the Web3 community start working with something as mundane as games. I mean, that's not DeFi, this is not banking, this is not making the world a better place, this is not liberation, this is not voting, this is like, it has nothing to do with what the usual topics would have been. But it's a huge market in demand of tooling that allows a lot of people to sustain, to basically survive this dip that we're facing right now. And it would be nice if the community that is usually very, very helpful and trying to make it a better place for everybody really saw this opportunity and reached out to help game developers as well. Because I think it needs a lot more people to get the message out there that this doesn't have to mean it's the end of all indie development, but it's the opportunity to come together with folks who have the tools built already. That's about it. If there are any questions, feel free to ask me.
You can just go ahead without the mic.
Like first, when we comment, like my experience with Web3 gaming is the problem is that games are just not really fun or like there yet.
Yeah.
And other thing that you users or gamers, they don't really care about like owning things in I mean, they don't really see the value, I guess. You really, as you said, you need to be degen, or you need to really come from like investment kind of perspective to this. But the thing, like on the good side, what I see was working or is working with, let's call it traditional gaming, is crowdfunding. Yeah. So actually, like from all your talk, I see like just doing ICOs for games that could actually work. Yes. So something in that direction. So crowdfunding works for games. So you can just make a demo, like make a nice video and yeah.
That's
my comment.
But that's exactly what is the direction this is all heading. But making this available super early in the process and giving people the opportunity to invest into the games themselves, and not just hoping with some pre-order code that things might or might not fall into place, because this will only benefit the ones that have the power to do that. I don't know, big studios that say, okay, we do pre-order on Steam next. Try this as an indie. You will not even be allowed to do that just because of the risk that you might never deliver. If you're DICE from Sweden and you make another Battlefield, of course, you can cash in 1 billion overnight before ever having a game. And this is exactly where we're going, that we want to make sure as early as you can produce any asset, put it out there and allow people to become your community. And without owning that piece, you cannot really become part, because then you will basically fund some platform that is like Indiegogo or, I don't know, Kickstarter, that will then have the money, and you're at the grace of them again. So what you said is absolutely correct, and we're going as extreme as possible to the early production stages to say, hey, if you want to put it in front of people, like that slide that said, if you can make it, you can validate it. If you can create something fast, making it available to your community will allow you to validate your vision equally fast. This is exactly where ownership comes into play. Because if people want to own something that you created super early, and they take it for free. And then they are smart enough to sell it to somebody else. You can see, oh, this has a value now. I didn't do nothing. Community actually validated what I gave to them, and I can see that it has a value now. It's not your money as a developer, but you can see that it is worth moving in this direction. And then you go to the last step where monetization gets easy. And you do this with what really matters to the community you grow on the way. So it's really a subtle difference, but a powerful one.
Got that. What do you think, how much should they be? Because there are already existing Web3 games. I tried out some of them, right? And it takes quite a long time until you have a certain amount and it's something valuable. So I like the idea to attract also new people, but shouldn't it be a bit more than what is existing there right now to attract more people to get into the game first?
The productions that are out there are not very good, to be honest. A lot of games that have been made that incorporated Web3 features, they are not very good. The good ones that are being released right now, or the ones that are coming in a couple of months, will have a very different profile, but they will still need to attract another community at first, because you can't make games as we know them today, like real-time games that need to put a lot of computational throughput on the table. You cannot do this on a blockchain easily, and it's not required. So the ownership part that you want to be part of in the future is there exists a game entirely off-chain, and next to it there exists a world on-chain, a persistent world on-chain. And parts of that game, mainly the economic loop at first, and then later stuff like agreements or anything that you could potentially put into a smart contract, will slowly find their way on-chain, so that the games can stay beautiful as they are today. But to get to this point, to ever get to the point to build something like this, you can apply what I just said. You need to start early. You need a community that wants to be invested into your game, and then you need the infrastructure that they can even do that. So I fully agree. What we see today as Web3 games is not overly convincing, and the ones that will be convincing are currently in the early stages of their life cycle. They exist. For example, there's this one thing on Starknet called Influence. This is something that I play, for example, and it's built in a way that all you can really do right now is help building the world. There's not much happening there. It wants to turn into something as beautiful and big as EVE Online, but right now the community is invested and helping to source minerals from the ground and build stuff so that the world even exists. And this is how this is moving, like really slow. Still, it shows, for example, they did the exact same thing. They could fund their entire development up to this point without any external money, but some grant from Starknet Foundation. And they have a big community by now, which is what I'm trying to express to every game developer. It's possible. That's my message, or my mission in all this.
Yeah, what they did with days and banners, so they gave more away, like the one you mentioned lately from Starknet?
They got a grant from Starknet. They didn't have to give anything away from their game. They are still like it will be community owned anyways. So the game ends up being entirely community owned. It is like, because every like it's a solar system. You can own everything there, and people do. So by now it's a circular economy already in the early stages. Yes.
To play, you need to pay. Yeah? You need to buy some pack, like starter pack or something.
Totally. But very few lucky people who supported that vision right from the start and said, hey, this is so good, I want to do some community work. And they got their asteroids for free. But yeah, if you want to start playing, you need to pay while you play just to pay for transaction costs. I mean, it's relatively cheap, but still, it needs to happen. Yes, please.
Oh yeah, so as a team building a game, I invite everybody who's curious about casual gaming and mobile gaming also in the context of this to play a game, just come related to me and learn about this. One question I would like to ask though, because I see we talked a lot about ownership now and onboarding people, and I think that's like an important part for sure. But actually something that we realized is that there's mechanics that you can only make possible through this technology that other games cannot like bring on essentially. And these mechanics are actually the part that then is fun and yeah, let's say I see more potential in this regard of like saying we can build games that maybe were really hard to build before or even impossible essentially through enabled through a technology. And so I was wondering if you had any thoughts on this, if you have any examples about this. Like, I mean, I guess you have also followed like trends like the Dark Forest and Primordium and what these guys are doing, or now Trifle Labs here in Berlin, if anybody knows them, starting out. So I was just curious, like, if you found more of these use cases that are not focused about ownership, because I think it's like one part of it, sure, but like I actually find the mechanics the more interesting part.
Yeah, there are definitely things that couldn't have happened in any other way. For example, you mentioned Dark Forest. I remember one thing where people started selling information, like a black market emerged alongside that game just to sell information that you couldn't have because of information asymmetry basically in the game, which is pretty cool. I don't have any mechanics right now that I personally would say are important enough to craft a game around this, but this is due to the fact that I'm not a game designer who thinks about this all day long. I'm totally sure there are game mechanics that will excite people a lot, that you couldn't get built any other way. So maybe you have an example for me.
Maybe not mechanics, but rather thing that you can, basically customization is also, it's not a mechanic in a game, it's also not an ownership, but it's something that is unlocked by the these more like self-sovereign games that have some just rules on chain, some parts, but then the front ends to those games, like the clients, some graphics can be different, and so like the example with Dark Forest is that since all of the rules or parts of the rules are on chain, there are plenty of different front ends for this game. Like there is the original with the asteroids and the space, but there are also like some in terminals, some in other mediums. So I guess that's one interesting one, but it is more related to the autonomous games.
Yeah, autonomous worlds in general and the property that they invite modding is really important from my point of view. It's just not something that is overly common. It is getting there. Like big games like Roblox, there are even providers that want to make sure that user-generated content is finding its way into games, but it's usually moderated, so it's not as extreme as we would like to see this. There's this one studio from Berlin, Clang Games, who came up with a proposal to do this in phases, where it's moderated first and then it gets less moderated over time, and in the end you can basically add whatever you want to that game. Physics, like physics for the game world that could be totally different from what we expect, but still you can rely on them, is really interesting. And then obviously the fact that you can fully invest everything you've got into a game because you can be sure this game will be there as long as someone is willing to spin up a node and run it. That's different as well, but this is all not game mechanics that like foster fun in gameplay just because it happens on a blockchain. But they're important properties that all make this even more exciting. What I wanted to pretty much express today was only because this is a very tech-savvy audience, like directly attached to the protocol level and research around there. And I think you have the voice. People will listen. And if you just take home that the gaming community needs as much help as they can get in terms of tooling that allows them to financially sovereign build their games. Because if we don't help, I'm not sure who will be there to make sure that we don't end up in a situation where you don't want to play or don't want to download a game anymore because it's just too boring.
Well, to that, what are the reasons that the market has declined? I mean, why?
It was hyperinflated during COVID.
Oh.
A lot of money for making games was there just because people needed to stay at home, and we don't have that situation anymore. So I'm working with games that have already had 10, 15, 20 million production value, and these are going down. Just because the next 20, 30, 50 million don't come anymore. And this is big teams, 100, 120 people. And they could, this is what kind of makes me nervous about it, they could sustain. All they really need is a bit of help from people who have seen the exact same transformation on the financial markets with DeFi pretty much. They could benefit from people who have this background knowledge a lot. And maybe you have friends who work at game studios. Just keep it in the back of your mind that it can be very, very substantially helpful if you share your expertise. And they, game developers are usually great at coming up with solutions quick. But a little bit of help to sustain will get them a long way.
But before COVID-19, there were games, and there was, obviously, there are games where people developing these games are institutions. Do you think that we'll get back to the things they were? There's something sort of fundamentally changed before with COVID-19.
No, right now it's just a very easy play. Let's say you are a big publisher and you have hyper deep pockets. Then it's like in medieval times when you besiege a castle, and the one who has most resources will just wait until there's nothing left to fight. And this is kind of the situation right now. We have these ginormous corporations that own 90% of the revenue of the entire market. It's like 50 games own 90% of the revenue. And then there is like this 10% that 90% of the people making games need to share to do anything. So it's kind of obvious how this plays out. And this is why I think the moment in time where people really need to find new ways is great to build bridges between communities like the Web3 community and game communities to work together like more effectively this time. And maybe we end up in a self-sustaining state at one point where there is no need for intermediaries anymore. And this could even, because games is low stakes, this is not like actual money, this could work better than what we see with the transformation of the financial markets, which is taking much longer than probably everybody coming to the Ethereum meetups would have expected 8 years ago. We still need to work to get there. And this is potentially an easier field to show how this can really go all the way through. Okay.
All right.
Then thank you very much.